asks me before it really allows us to start. Okay, so welcome again to another Excel Toronto Meetup group session. We are in February, and this is the second session for this month. We are doing two types of sessions, the expanded series, which Steve will be presenting on today under that series. These are sessions with topics more on the advanced kind of side, we would say, meaning it's not necessarily about the fundamental Excel features that you may need to know if you are starting your learning journey in Excel. And then every month we also have been having another series that we called Excel Essentials, where we cover more of the fundamentals, either related to formulas or other Excel features that are important for everyone to know. These sessions are a little bit shorter, and we've been doing this for this quarter. We will continue in March, and then we will assess, and we will decide if we continue or not. So if you have any feedback, feel free to reach out to us. And I'm sorry for my voice. I'm a little bit on the downside today with a little bit of a cold, but I hope everything works well. Okay, so see, we are recording. Be mindful of that. Our YouTube channel will have the recording soon, so your participation might be part of the recording. If you don't consent with that, please disconnect, and then you can catch up with the recording that will be made available. And welcome everyone, especially those of you who are here and are new that don't know us. My name is Celia Alves. I am an Excel MVP. I work as a business analyst and a product advocate for Sheetcast as well, who happen to be our sponsor for the meetup. And yeah, I've been running this group for it has been 6 years that the group was created already. The first session will be celebrated will be 6 years in coming May. So it's been quite a journey. Welcome everyone here, and usually what happens is a few days after the session, we will send out an email to everyone who has not opted out from our emails with all the information about the video recording, files, if there are any files available, or any other extra information that the presenter may want to share with us. Sometimes I send information about Excel events or books or things like that. So you will get that on the email along with a copy of this slide deck. Grania, would you like to introduce yourself as well? Grania has been with us since session 1 and became a member of the organizing team as well.
Yes, it's been a wonderful journey. It's 6 years now, according to your LinkedIn post the other day.
Yeah.
That is really quite amazing when you think about the fact that we've been 1 year in person and then 5 years online. So that's a lot of sessions recorded and on our YouTube channel. So it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for starting it, Celia.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us and for helping so much, Grania. Okay, so next sessions. So next session, 2 sessions in March already scheduled, and also one for April. In March, we will have Shandip Chabra presenting about Power Query. He just recently published one book about Power Query beyond the user interface. It will be a great session. Well, all our sessions are fantastic. So, but if you want to join us for that one, be mindful that it will happen early in the morning in Toronto at 8 a.m. because Shandip is on the other side of the world, so it would not work if we run it at the usual time. And then in March 19, we will have Shirley Mormon. She has been working as an Excel consultant and trainer for many, many years. She will be presenting about Excel checkboxes. There are a lot of nice and useful and fancy things that you can do with checkboxes that were recently recently added to Excel. So that will be our session in March. And then in April 16, on April 16th, Bill Jelen, who also published the book recently about pivot tables, he's been talking about pivot tables many times, including in our meetup group. If you go to the recordings, you will find a presentation on pivot tables by Bill Jelen. But this book includes working with pivot tables along with dynamic array functions, Power Query, and Python and Copilot. So a lot of different things that have been added to Excel in the more recent years. And Bill Jelen now is presenting, is telling us how we can take advantage of those when we are working with pivot tables. So you see a lot of great content. I hope you can join us in the next few sessions. A shout out to our sponsor, Sheetcast. Sheetcast is an add-in for Excel that allows us to transform your Excel workbooks into web applications. I just presented about this add-in recently at the Global Excel Summit. There's a lot of fantastic things that you can do if you want to have an Excel file that works online as a web application. This might be a good solution for you. If you have questions about it, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to give you the answers or connect you with someone who can help you. And we may have a session soon about Sheetcast. Has not been scheduled yet, but it can happen soon. The Women in Excel LinkedIn group is available on LinkedIn. If you want to be part of this community, if you identify as a woman and want to join us, it's a safe place to connect with other women, learn from each other, support. There's sessions happening regularly where you can you can test your presenting skills, for example, and ask for feedback. So feel free to join us. And Grania, I'm a member, but Grania, she's the organizer or part of the organizing team. Is there anything else that you would like to add, Grania?
Just that we have monthly meetings for women in Excel that are not recorded so that people can join in, women can join in that are members. And we do get to know each other, then a couple of short presentations, and then just sort of almost coffee time after. And it has had wonderful feedback. And it's been an absolutely wonderful for MS Excel Toronto because we've now had 3 presenters in a row that we discovered, or not discovered, but became more familiar with in as members of Women in Excel. So it's been of great help to the women and to our group here tonight.
And then, yeah, for all the members. So what happens is that sometimes people feel shy about presenting, and as a member of the Women in Excel, they get a chance to present, but not being recorded and on a more safer environment and just more relaxed and whatnot. So then they feel more confident and they end up coming and present with us. So that it's great.
Yes,
I think
it's wonderful.
yes. Okay, so, and that's it. There's other learning resources. There's my newsletter, a list of recommended Excel books, the YouTube channels, my blog that you can then discover with the PDF that will go out after the session. And that's it. So today we have Steve Kraynak with us. Steve, I've been in contact with Steve for a couple of years now. We met as part of the Microsoft MVP community. Steve used to work for Microsoft, and then in the last few years, he joined the Some Product team as an Excel consultant. He's extremely knowledgeable about Excel, not only as an Excel user and developer like most of us are, but also from the technical standpoint, from the behind the scenes, from having worked with the Excel team. I'm going to read his bio so that everyone is aware of his trajectory. Steve Kraynak is a Microsoft MVP, recognized for his expertise and contributions to the community of Excel users worldwide. He's the director of Some Product US LLC, a leading modeling, training, and business consulting firm with offices around the world. Steve joined Some Product after more than a decade as a product manager for the Excel team at Microsoft, where he helped craft many features in Excel, including worksheet functions like ifs and text join, data from picture, Excel for Mac, user experience improvements like smooth scrolling, and many other features. So you see, Steve has been involved a lot with in the past with some of the technical aspects of the tool that we use every day. Steve has been a featured presenter and trainer at the Microsoft Ignite, Excel Palooza, Excel Summit South, Excel Virtually Global, Microsoft Business Application Summit, Spring, the MERNSC, I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly, Accounting Conference, APIC,
yeah, that one's called
and others.
Miansky.
Jansky. Thank you. So presenting in many different events and conferences. Steve has nearly 30 years of experience working with Excel and related tools. Prior to his time with Microsoft, he was instrumental in leading customer success at a startup, Prodience, who were acquired by Microsoft and their tools integrated into Excel. He has also a decade of experience in the vaccine manufacturing industry, where he made his mark by using desktop tools such as Excel to automate and simplify many business processes. So thank you so much, Steve, for being here with us today, for making the time, not only to be here, but to also prepare all the materials and the presentation. We know that it's an investment, a considerable investment of time. So your generosity with your time and your knowledge is much appreciated. Thank you so much for being with us. And the stage is yours. Feel free to share your screen and to fill in any gaps I may have left, and let us know what you have for us.
All right. Well, thank you for the introduction. That saves me some time because I have an introductory slide, but I think you've covered it. And I'll just talk about, so the topic for tonight, or wherever you are, what time of day it is customizing Excel. And it's really customizing a bunch of different things. They're not all related, but things that will help you to work faster, more efficiently, and just easier. Some of the things we'll talk about are startup templates, cell styles, but there's a whole bunch of other things. Feel free to jump in and raise your hand with questions or interrupt me. I think I normally will be able to go through this in about 45 minutes or so if there were no questions. So I think we have a few more minutes than that. So feel free to stop me. And here we go. Let's see why my slide is not moving forward. There we go. So this is a little bit more about me. The only thing I would add that Celia didn't mention is the final thing at the very bottom there, is that I'm a father of 4, including triplets. And in fact, I actually used Excel when the triplets were really small. We had a lot of people helping us out. So we created a spreadsheet to keep track of all their daily things like feedings, vitamins, you know, the dirty stuff, so that everybody would get their fair share of food and all that stuff. All right. So some of the things we'll learn about here are a whole bunch of things about using templates. Default new document template, personal templates, a new sheet template, customizing your template, and then a bunch of things about default settings in Excel, talk about cell styles, pivot table defaults, chart templates, and then the Personal Macro Workbook. So I'm just going to start out by showing a few real basic things. This is just kind of a lead into why I like to use a new workbook template. So you can go into Excel and change a few things. So for example, I'm just going to show changing a few things that I normally like to do, like maybe changing the font size. And you can see I have 3 tabs down there on this new workbook. So first I'll just change the font size. You can see there's the 3 tabs, but I normally only like to start with one because, maybe I only need one. I also don't like having the grid lines on. So there's just a few things that, you might change there. If you go into the Excel options, this is where you can change the font size for the default. So, you could go in there and do that. And it does work. You can change the number of sheets that you have and click OK. And then when you restart, those will take effect. So that's a pretty good thing you can do, but there's much more you can do with templates. So here I'll restart Excel, create a new workbook. And now you can see that the font size is smaller. There's only one sheet. But I do have the grid lines still on, which I had turned those off because I typically just don't like to have the grid lines. But it kept that on there. So there's a way that you can have much more customization. That's by starting with a custom workbook template. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But this slide just kind of basically gives you the summary of it. So you're going to create a new workbook, make all the changes that you want that you would typically use. So the things I just showed and more, and I'll show some more of that. And then you're going to save it as an Excel template file. And if you save it into the specific folder that I have up on the screen there, it will be used whenever you create a new workbook, or if you just start up Excel and it starts by creating a new workbook, and I'll show how you can do that. That way you can get all the customizations you want instead of just those few Excel options that I showed. And one thing that's really helpful here is that let me see if I can get my pointer to show up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's a special folder you need to save this in, and it's real easy to find in Windows Explorer. If you go into the address bar and you type %appdata%, and I'll show that in a second, but that's just a little secret. And then the workbook itself must be named Book XLTX or Book XLTM if you need macros to be in it. If they both exist, then Excel will just choose Book XLTX, so just be aware of that. And now I'll show how this works.
Steve, can that path is the same for Mac users?
No, and I'll show how to do this on Mac as well.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, this is just for sorry. This is just for Windows. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. But I will have an example of that. So here you can see I typed %appdata% in the address bar, and it brings up the folder that you can see here. And then you have to navigate in. So there's the Microsoft folder. And then inside there's an Excel folder. And then inside there's the one that's called Excel Start. And this is where you would put the customized template. And I'll show how to go through the whole thing here. So that's just showing you the folder. So here I am in Excel, and I'm just going to make some more changes here just so this is really obvious that it's taking effect. So I could go in and change the whole, if I wanted to, I could change the font size for the whole sheet, which is what I did there. I selected the whole sheet, change it to size 11. There's actually a better way to do that, and I'll show that now. And this is just a little precursor to what I'm going to show later about cell styles. So instead of changing the font for the whole sheet, you can just go into the cell styles, and there's this cell style called normal, which is a special cell style that's basically your default font, and you can right click on there and modify it. And then inside there, you can go and modify any of the properties. So here, if I wanted to change it to 11, for example, I can hit that. And now you'll see as I click OK here, the sheet will change to 11. So it's really just by changing that one spot. And now it's at 11 size font. Now I'm going to change and turn off the grid lines like I mentioned before. And here I'm just going to type so that we can see when I create a new workbook based on this, that it will have my template there in cell B2 just as an indicator that it's actually being used. And now the part is to save it. So you want to go to File, Save As, and the easy thing to do is click More Options. And then from the Save As type, you want to choose Excel Template. And then by default, it's not putting you into the folder that I showed before. So you need to navigate there. So again, inside here, you can type that %appdata%, and that's an easy way to get to where you need to go. And then navigate in Microsoft and Excel, and then Excel Start. And here you need to name this book.xltx. So by default, it had book 1 there. So I'm just taking off the 1. And then I hit save. Now I have to close this out because if I have the template open when I try to create a new document based on it, it will actually crash Excel. So if you want to crash Excel, you can try that out. So there I closed it. And now if I just press Control N, it'll create a new workbook and it's based on that template. So now you can see up in the title bar, it's just book 1, but it did use my template. You can see that it's got the font size that I had and it says my template in cell B2.
Nice.
Yeah. So the power of this is just that, I only put a few changes in there, but you can put lots of different things in there. And I will show an example of that. And now the same kind of thing on Mac. Here, it's a little bit different. You have to go to save as, so file, save as, template, and then the folder is a different folder path, and it's got, obviously you're on a Mac, so it's totally different than Windows as far as finding things. The %app data % doesn't work here, but you can just type startup here in the search field. So in this dialog, you may see that it's a little bit smaller dialog and you don't have a search field. And if that's the case, there's a little drop down that you can see. And let's see how I can bring up my laser pointer here. So this drop down, if you have a smaller dialog where you don't see the search field, you can just hit that drop down and it will expand the box for you. And then you'll have the search field and you can just type startup in there. And then it'll find the startup folder. It's not called Excel Start on Mac. And then inside there, there's an Excel, Word, and PowerPoint folder. You would choose the Excel one and then save the file in there. And again, it needs to be called book.xltx. So you can see that up there. And then when you save it, and this basically will just behave similar to what we saw in Windows, where if you create a new document now, it will base it on that file. Now, there is an issue that came up recently. This is actually for me. So I just created a video to show, those steps that I just showed you there. But when I was trying to repeat this recently, searching for the startup folder on Mac, it no longer works on my Mac. And I think it's because I updated to a more recent version of Mac OS. And for some reason, it won't let me search and find these like special files. And I put the path there on the screen. So if you're on a Mac and you try to search for startup and it doesn't work, there is a folder in there that you can find. Unfortunately, you have to go through this path that I have on the screen to find it and put your.
Wow.
Steve, can I ask something? Are you muted? I think you're muted.
Celia, we can't hear you. Put your mic closer to your mouth, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank
you. I think we lost Steve. I think Steve was talking, but I could not hear. Now we can. Yes.
Okay, I think I haven't had a microphone on, but
ran out of battery or something.
Died. Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I was going to ask you something. Some of the options, some of the settings, for example, the number of sheets with which we want a workbook to start, maybe the font size as well. We can also set them on the file properties, file options.
So
under file options, what would be the difference between those
settings? The difference is that if you set it in, like if you go to File, Excel Options and set it there, it only gives you the ability to change the font size and the number of sheets. And in the template, you can change everything that you want. So
yeah, including having macros and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, you can have macros. Like I typed a value in that one cell. I turned off the grid lines. So
yeah,
I'm going to show a template that we use with some product that has a whole lot more things than just, a blank workbook or a blank sheet. And in that case, it's just, there's all the things that you can build into a workbook. that are just not in those options.
Yeah, agree. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So it's important to understand when this new workbook template gets used. So I showed in the example, I was just press Control N on the keyboard to create a new workbook, and in that case, it uses it. Similarly, on Mac, if I press Command N, it will create a new workbook based on the template. Or if you set up Excel so that it just launches directly to a new workbook rather than going to the gallery or the start screen, then it will just create a new workbook based on that template. There's a difference there that for the next option on Mac and Windows, and this one's kind of interesting. I think it's actually a bug on Windows. So if you have a new workbook template set up, but you go into the File menu on Windows and you hit that blank workbook icon, it's just going to use the default blank workbook.
Oh.
On Mac, if you hit that blank workbook icon, it's going to use your template that you set up. And the reason I think that there's a bug here is that I showed this presentation somewhere else, and that someone came to me afterward and said they had been working with a client who has a template that they want all their users to use all the time. And on Windows, it's a problem because if people go into File New and hit that blank workbook icon, it's bypassing the template that they're supposed to be using. And they said in the past it worked, and if they hit that blank workbook icon, it did use the right template, and it's no longer doing that. So I know it's been reported to Microsoft because I reported it there, but I don't know if it will ever get fixed. It seems like it's fairly, for people that aren't affected, obviously it's fairly insignificant. For people that are affected, it could be important, but
Annoying.
I just having worked at Microsoft, I have a hunch that this one won't get fixed unless some enterprise customer complains about it enough. Little insight into how things work at Microsoft. All right. So here I'm going to show how you can have the new workbook, that template be used just when you launch Excel. So normally when you launch Excel, you come to this startup screen, and on Mac we call this the gallery, but you can turn this off. So if you go into your Excel options on the General tab there, scroll down to the bottom, and there's this option to show the start screen when the application starts. Normally that's enabled by default. I have it unchecked here, but if you check that, obviously it'll do the normal thing. But if you uncheck it, then when you launch Excel, it just comes to a new workbook and it'll use your template. Let's see what I have going here next. So here's the same thing on Mac. So if you go into the Mac preferences and go to General, there's a thing called Show Workbook Gallery when opening Excel. That's on by default. And if you don't want to see that gallery and just launch directly to a new workbook, you would just uncheck that box, and that would do that for you. Okay, so similar to setting up a customized template for a new workbook, you can also set up a template for new sheets. It's very similar, but you're going to set up a workbook and save it into that same folder, but this time it'll be called sheet.xltx. And that file will be used anytime you hit the plus sign to create a new sheet. And I'll show how that works. So here I'm starting with the template file that I had before. And if I create a new sheet, you'll see it's just using a default blank worksheet. So even though I have my customized workbook template, it's still using the default worksheet template, or the default worksheet, I should say. And if you want something more customized, you can do that. So here, I'm just going to go back and I'll get rid of this one. And then I'm going to change. So in that cell, instead of just saying my template, I'm going to say my sheet template, so we can see for sure that this is being used. And now go save my file. So File, Save As, click on the options, choose Excel template. And now I need to go into the %appdata% folder again. And that's just a shortcut on Windows. Again, navigate into the Microsoft Excel and Excel Start folder. And now I need to call this workbook sheet.xltx. And now that I have it, again, I need to close this file before I can actually use it because it'll crash Excel. So I close it, create a new workbook here. So there's a new workbook. You can see it used the workbook template that just says my template. And then when I click on the new sheet button, it will give me a new sheet that uses that template. And you can tell because it says my sheet template. And I don't think yeah. So what you can also do is you can have a workbook that, so that file, even though it's called sheet.xltx, it can contain multiple sheets. So maybe you always want to insert a set of 3 sheets, for example. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you can just put as many sheets as you want in that template. And then when you click the new sheet button, it would actually add all 3. I think I just went back in my, yeah, okay. So those are the templates that, they're kind of special for the new workbook and new sheet. But you can also add a lot more flexibility because maybe you have, more than one template and you can't assign more than one template to the new workbook template or the new sheet template, but you can have as many personal templates as you want. So this way you would have to go into the gallery and pick the one you want rather than just hitting new workbook. But it's pretty flexible, and I'm going to go through all this, but you can see there my gallery has a few customized templates that I've set up. So here I'm going to create this new workbook, and let's see. Sorry, I had to record the demonstrations here ahead of time because I'm showing my computer. I didn't want to have any like historical files show up in there that weren't meant for general presentation. But anyway, so here you can see this is the default. It's just got my the new blank workbook, and then it has templates that are supplied along with Excel down at the bottom. And if you want to add your own personal ones in there, you can go into the Excel options, so down the bottom, and then go to the Save tab. And in here, there's a place called the Personal Templates location. Now, this could be any folder that you like. When you install Office on your computer, it will, by default, create a folder that you can use called Custom Office Templates, and it's usually just in the Documents folder. So I'm just going to use that one for simplicity's sake. So I'm just copying this path from Windows Explorer and go back to my Excel options and paste it in there. So you may have noticed I had some files that were already in that folder, so I did have some preloaded templates. Now that I've specified that option in Excel, when I go to the File tab, I can go to New, and now there's this Personal tab. So before, I just had the new workbook at the top and the Office templates at the bottom, but now I have this Personal tab, and if I click on there, it shows me my personal templates. So I have one there for some product. We do financial modeling, and we have a template that has a whole bunch of stuff set up for us, and I'll show that in a bit. And I had a couple other templates there. So now this template has, you can see it's got a cover sheet. It's got a whole bunch of other stuff in there. And now it adds it to my, so now I'm on File Home, and it just shows up in there. It's just like a recent template that you use will show up in there. And I can go down to File New. If I go into Personal, I can find the other things, but it's just nice that once you use a template from the personal folder, you don't have to navigate back into there. It just shows up at the top. And you can even have subfolders in there if you want. So you could have a whole bunch of different templates. I just threw some in here just for the sake of demonstration. But then you can also control what shows up here. So if you have templates that you don't want there, you can right click and remove them. And if you have ones that you always want to have show up in there, you can pin them just by doing that. And then once you've done that, you don't ever really need to go back into that personal folder. You could even remove the folder path from your Excel options, although there's not really a strong reason to remove it. But you could if you wanted to. So now you have all those different templates just at your fingertips ready to go. You can set up something similar on Mac. However, this is an interesting one where you really just need to know how to do this, because if you try to do this in Excel, you'll never be able to find a place where you can specify your user templates folder. You just have to know that if you go to Word and go into the Word preferences, you can click on the file locations, and then this dialog will come up, and you can put the folder that you want to put your templates in into Word, and Excel will recognize it and it will use the same folder. So
Range.
kind of fun. Now, I should probably be partially to blame for this because I worked on Excel for Mac when I was at Microsoft. But I'm going to claim that it's not my fault, because I think this feature was there before I started working on it. And a lot of things are like shared features across the apps, and I wasn't responsible for everything. So, okay, I just want to also point out some other differences. So if you go to, on the Mac, when you go into the gallery, it won't appear on the Home tab. So here I've clicked on the New, and there's the personal folder showing there, and my templates show there. The appearance of the thumbnails is a little bit different. And then also, I mentioned earlier, if you click on that blank workbook one at the top, it will use your customized one and not the built-in one from Excel. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about these thumbnails. So creating templates is, if you get anything from this, creating the template's the most important thing. But if you want to get a little bit fancier, you do have control of the little thumbnail that shows up in the gallery. So you can see I have the thumbs down over that one. It's just called my blank template. And if you create one, like if you create an Excel template and you don't do what I'm going to show you now, you'll just get a generic document icon like you see there. If you want something that actually gives you some indication about what's inside the template, I'm going to show you how to do that right now, like the one there that says some product on it. So this is another little sneaky trick that you need to know. So here you can see just the generic document icon or image. And I have a bunch of those here. And if I really want them to look a little bit more useful or meaningful, it's actually really easy to do, but you need to know a little trick. So here I'm opening up my template, and you can see, okay, so this is just the cover sheet of my template. And now to get that thumbnail, it's really easy. You just go to File, Save As, and go to the More Options. And here is where the little trick is. If you go and choose Excel template, the XLTX, you're not going to be able to get this to work. But if you choose the Excel macro enabled template, it exposes this little checkbox that you see there called Save Thumbnail. And if you check that box, then Excel will remember that, and you can switch back. You don't actually need to save it as a macro enabled file. You just had to switch to that momentarily to expose that checkbox. Now I can save it as an Excel template. And I really didn't do anything to this file except change that checkbox and saved it. And now when I go back to the file menu, you can see that my thumbnail actually shows me the top left part of the first sheet, or the active sheet, when I saved it. So it's kind of nice if you want to make your thumbnails look a little bit, or if you want to make a thumbnail instead of using that default. Now you can actually make them look a little bit nicer too. So here you can see it's showing me the row numbers and the column headers, and it doesn't really look great to me. So you can change that. It's really simple. Just go to the View tab on the ribbon and turn off headings. So that gets rid of the column numbers and row headers on just this sheet. And then all you have to do is just save your file. I think I hit Save As here, but I can just hit Save. And now when I go back to the File tab, if you look at the icon, the thumbnail, it got rid of those column and row headers. So it's a nice way to make it look a little bit nicer. This is just this summary, again, how to get to that little Save Thumbnail checkbox. So this is exactly what I showed, nothing new here, but a good reference. And now, one last thing about the thumbnail, you can actually customize it a little bit more. So I looked at a bunch of the thumbnails that Microsoft provides. So there's a whole bunch of templates in there that if you haven't seen, if you want to learn about different features of Excel, just go in and search for templates and just say learn, and then it'll come up with a whole bunch of templates. And I noticed that they all had a pretty nice thumbnail and they were a certain size. So I figured out what that size was, and it's really a certain dimension that's 100 width to 77 height. So you can convert that. I just do 10 centimeters by 7.7 centimeters. If you create an image that's that size, and I'm going to show you how to save it and insert that into your template to be used as the thumbnail, regardless of whatever was on that first sheet. So here I'm going to do this in PowerPoint because I found this is an easy way to do it. I just have an image there and I'm saving, or I'm inserting a shape and put no fill. And the reason I do this is so I can set the dimensions. So I'm setting it to 10 centimeters and I'll do 7.7 centimeters at the top. And then I'm going to move my image over there and just make sure, okay, so I kind of fit it in there. And now I'm going to screenshot just around the box that was the right dimensions for me. So on Windows, you can press the Windows Shift S, and then you can do a screenshot. So this will give me an image that's exactly the right dimensions for my thumbnail. And I'll just paste that back into PowerPoint. And now I just want to right click on it and do Save as Picture. And this is where you need to pick the right file type. So you can choose Save as File Type at the bottom and choose Windows Metafile or WMF. And the file needs to be called thumbnail.wmf. So I just save that, and I don't know if you could notice there, but it was going into my custom office templates folder. And so now I have a thumbnail that's ready to be used, and that's going to be inserted into my template. And I'm going to show how to do this, but basically you just need to find your template file, change so it'll be something.xltx. You're going to change the file name so it has .zip on the end of it. And that way you can open it up as a zip file. And you're going to copy that thumbnail WMF that you created, go into the zip file into a certain place, and paste and replace the one that may have been automatically created by Excel. And then go back to the template file, remove the .zip, and turn it back to XLTX, and then it'll work. So here's how that works. So you can see what the thumbnail looks like right now. And then I'm going to go out and switch this over. So go to Windows Explorer. There's my thumbnail WMF that I just created. So copy that. And then pick my template, and I'm just going to put .zip on the end of it. And then double click on it to go inside there, and then go into the doc props folder, and you'll see a thumbnail WMF. This is the one that was created by Excel when I saved it. You can just hit paste and then choose to replace it. And then you just go back out of it. So you just need to go up to the zip file so you can rename it again. So back up to custom office templates in this case. Take .zip off the end of it and say yes. And now if I go back in Excel and go to the File tab, you can see my new thumbnail shows up in there. So you can get a little bit fancy. Certainly not required, but it's kind of cool.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So that's what I have. I'm going to move on and talk about some other stuff that's completely different now. But if anyone has questions about the templates or anything you've seen, it'd be a good time to bring those up now. You can bring it up later, but I'm going to move on to some other stuff.
I don't see any questions, but got lots of cools and wows.
Okay. There was
this is awesome comment. Sauce.
Okay.
So, there was only one comment above where Jennifer Gunham, she was saying that when she went to look for the Excel start folder, she could not find, but then realized that she needed to click to show hidden items in the view
okay,
menu.
that's a great point. Okay.
Yeah.
So if anyone else runs into that, Thank you for noticing. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are lots of more useful options and ways that you can customize Excel. I'm sure there are a lot more that I'm not even going to cover here, but I wanted to go through a bunch here. This is just the list, so I'm going to go through each of these, so I won't read through the list. The first is to set up auto recovery. I do this every time if I get a new computer and install Excel. I always change this auto recovery setting. So if you go into your Excel options and go to save, you'll notice that auto recovery is turned on by default, but it's set to 10 minutes. So what this means is that if you're working and Excel crashes without you having saved your file, you could lose up to 10 minutes worth of work. The auto recovery feature will actually save a recoverable copy of that file, and you've probably all seen this at some point. When you launch Excel, it'll have a little pane on the side asking if you want to recover a file. So 10 minutes is something, that setting, it just feels too long to me. So I always go in and I set that to 1 minute. And that way, at most, I'm going to lose 1 minute of work. If Excel crashes, I'll know it's been saving it. Now, there is a potential if you have a workbook that takes a long time to save, the auto recovery is actually saving a copy of that file in a recovery folder. But if your file is really complex, it could take time to save that. If that's the case, you can disable auto recovery just for a specific workbook. And that way you'll avoid having that happen to you every minute. So that's a good one that I would recommend always changing. And the same goes, the same goes for PowerPoint and Word as well. I don't think I have it in here, but there's a slight difference on Mac. It's actually better on Mac. So if you have a Mac, and this is something I'm happy that I was able to work on, the auto recovery there is just really intelligent. All you have to do is turn it on or off, and Excel determines how long it takes to save the file, and it will optimize the recovery time so that if the file saves itself really quickly, it'll auto recover like literally every few seconds as you're making changes. But if it's a file that takes a long time to save, it'll slow down the auto recovery frequency so that it doesn't interfere with you. So it's pretty cool. And hopefully they'll put that on Windows, but my guess is they probably won't. Another simple thing is the formula bar. So a lot of people don't know you can change the font on the formula bar. So another thing about that option I showed in the beginning, when you change the default font for your workbook in the Excel options, that font will also get used in the formula bar. So another nice thing you can do is if you want the formula bar to either be like larger or smaller than your default worksheet, you can use that custom template to control the font that you get in your sheet, but you can set the font size in your Excel options, and that'll be the one that gets used in the formula bar. You can also use a monospace font for the formula bar, and you can see here, I'm just turning it on, but the formula bar that's shown there is not monospace, so it's kind of every character could be a different width. But if you turn it on, you'll see how when I click OK, it kind of spreads things out. So it's a little bit more readable if you have really complex formulas, especially if you have multi-lines. But again, it's just a personal preference, but I like that one, the monospace font. All right, so data conversion options. This is something that a lot of people complain about for years and years with Excel. And I have some examples here. So if you type in a number with leading zeros, Excel will just remove those and give you a number. Or if you had a number with more than 15 digits, it would do either convert it to scientific notation or just cut off, round it at the end. So you'd lose some of the precision. Also, if you had something that looked like scientific notation, it would just automatically change it to that. If you had something that looked like a date, it would automatically change it to that as well. Now you have options to control all of that. So go into your Excel options, go to data, and then you have an option for each one of those different things I showed. So you can turn off basically any of those conversions. And I know this is a preference a lot of people have for different reasons, but I've turned those off. And now I'm going to go back and just repeat those same data entry things. And we'll see, like here, it's not going to remove the leading zeros. on this long number, it's not going to change it at all. It just leaves it as is. Now it is treating it as text, so you have to be aware of that. But at least it's not converting it, so you may not want it to be converted. So that's a great option if it's something that you've noticed and you're frustrated with. Now you know the secret. All right.
We
yes.
have a question, if that's okay, Steve.
Yeah.
Laco, I remember from last time, Laco is asking, when working with Power Query, doesn't autosave feature slow down the work?
So what I was showing was auto recovery, and it's just saving it to a local folder on your computer. So that one I don't think will slow things down. The auto save, it's kind of, it depends. I always use autosave, or I shouldn't say always, but for the most part, I use autosave. And I don't find it to be really causing any performance problems for me. There are some times when I open a file and I just want to play around and I don't want it to save my changes. But yeah, I think it's just could be different on each file. If you're using Power Query, to be honest, I'd need to do a little investigation to see whether the file gets saved while you have Power Query, while you have the editor open. I think it probably does not do anything, because when you're working in the Power Query editor, you can't get to Excel, so there can't be any changes in the Excel file other than in the Power Query editor window. And when you leave that window, it gives you the choice to keep or discard your changes. So I think that autosave is not happening when that window is open, but I could be wrong. All right. Another few things about customizing Excel. Hopefully everyone knows about the quick access toolbar, but I wanted to mention that and show one that I like to put on there. And then also the search bar. So the search bar at the top takes a lot of space, and I know a lot of people like to see more of their file name there, and the search bar, like, why does it need to be so big? So you can change that. Just go into your options, and in advanced, I'm sorry, in general right there, you can collapse the search box, and you can see now it collapsed it over to the right. It's just an icon, and it gives you more space for the file name, but you can still use it just the way you did. It's just that it's small. Now the quick access toolbar, hopefully everyone takes advantage of that. One of the ones I like to put on there is the rename table field. So I'm going to find that in a second here. I'll go into the all commands list, and it's actually called change table name. So I just start typing a C, and now change table name comes up, and I add that. So what's really nice about this one is that now anytime I put my selection inside a table, I can see the table name at the top. I always think it's a good idea to rename your tables from the default, so you don't just get stuck with table 1, table 2, table 3, and it's something more meaningful. And now with that control up in my QAT, I see it immediately, and it's my reminder to change it, but it's also an easy way to see the table name without having to go to the table design tab on the ribbon. All right, let's talk about pivot table defaults. So here I'm just going to set up
Sorry, can I just interrupt with something? A question about the data conversion from Trevor. Is it when we choose that under the options, is it saved at the application level or the workbook level?
Yeah,
it's the application, I believe.
Application level, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and it will affect, I mean, I was just typing in data here, but it will affect, like if you copy data and paste it in there, or if you use the text import wizard, I think it affects all that. I don't think it affects Power Query, because in Power Query, you have control over the data that's coming in, like through your query. So you would have to do that there.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues it was created, this feature was created for, is with CSV files, when we open them and there's leading zeros or there's the dates or any of those
exactly
data types, we want to keep them. So it's at I'm almost sure it's at the app level, so that when you open a new workbook, it opens according to those options that you set up.
Yeah, that's right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I know there were some, if you go in the news, there were some really interesting stories from the scientific community where one in particular, there was some gene that was specified and Excel was converting it. So genes have names that are a lot of times a few numbers in a letter and another number, and it was converting it. So
As a
that was
date,
really
yeah.
frustrating to scientists. So that's fixed now. All right, let's talk about pivot tables. So I'm just going to create a pivot table and set up a few things just to show that, okay, the defaults, if you don't like those, obviously it's fairly easy to change pivot tables, but you can set up defaults to make it even easier. So here I'm just setting up a simple pivot table. You can notice it has the default style. And when I chose the date field, it grouped on the date and it shows me the years now. And I don't really like that, so I'm going to ungroup it. And so instead of having a group where I can navigate in, I just want the years and not the months. So I controlled my own grouping, set it to years, and now I just see my data by year. And then also, I may like to change the layout. So by default, when you create a pivot table, it's going to show with the Excel default settings, it's going to show up in what's called compact form. And the way you can tell it's compact is that the years there show up underneath the row labels. So you can see accessories and bikes and clothing, and then the years are directly below that. That's compact, so it's not as wide, but a lot of times it's just not the easiest way to look at your data. And I know a lot of people like this tabular form, which I'll switch to. And now you can see that every different value gets its own column. So the years are by themselves in a column. And then also, you may not like the default style. So maybe you just want to pick a different color from the gallery. You can actually go into there and choose one as default. So I'm going to set that one as the default. You can modify those styles or create custom styles as well. So you could use those. And then I'm going to change, let's see. No. So you can set pivot table defaults to do all those changes that I made. So if you go into your Excel options, go to data, and then the first thing that you had up there was a button to go into edit the default layout for pivot tables. So you can just manually go in and change any of these options. But what's really cool is that if you've set up a pivot table the way you want it, then you can import the settings from that pivot table into these options. So here you can see I have cell H11 highlighted back there, and it says layout import, and it shows H11. And if I just click the import button, it's going to bring all the settings in from that into the pivot table defaults. I think the only one that you can really tell there that changed is the report layout. It changed to show in tabular form. So that's kind of nice. And then you could go in further and change a bunch of things. So there's this auto fit column widths on update. I usually like to set up my column widths and then set that. So I uncheck that box, so you can do that now in your options, and you'll never have to uncheck it on every pivot table that you use. You can set what should show up for zero or for empty cells. So if you want a dash in there or if you want a zero in there, you can just set that ahead of time. And then if it's something that you always do in all your pivot tables, you don't need to set it again. You can also disable that automatic date and time grouping. So I've unchecked the box here to disable it. And that way, or I'm going to uncheck it. Sorry, I misspoke there. So it's unchecked by default, and I want to check it to disable it. It's kind of a weird user interface that you have to check something to disable it. But now I'm going to go and create, I have the same data on another sheet here, and I'm going to create the same pivot table and just show that it's a lot easier now that I've set up my defaults. So just pick a cell, and now I'm going to pick all the same fields that I did before. And you can see right away, it's giving me the style that I had before because I chose that one as the default. It's already in tabular form because I chose that as my default. And it didn't group my dates. So instead of having to ungroup and then regroup, I can just click on one and group it by years and click OK, and I'm done. So I think that was a little bit faster. I know that this is a real fast, simple example, but if you're someone that uses pivot tables a lot, I highly recommend using those pivot table defaults to save yourself some time. All right, let's talk about cell styles. So cell styles are something I think a lot of people just either don't know about or ignore, but they can be really useful. And just to show you how useful they are, I have an example here. You can see the header is that black bar with white text. And you can see I have a header there on row 6, and I have another one further down below. And I have this type of header formatting throughout our template that we use. So it's nice because it gives consistency, but through the use of cell styles, it's also very flexible. So if I wanted to change this cell style so it's no longer black, I can go into the cell styles and find the style that had been applied. Hopefully you are applying cell styles, which I've done here. And then I can modify it. And if I just wanted to change the color, instead of black, I want purple, I could just change that in one place in my cell style, and you can see it flows through everywhere. So it just makes your formatting so much easier. I really recommend, if you're working with a file that's pretty important and you're going to have formatting all over the place, take a little bit of extra time in the beginning to set up some cell styles, and you'll be happy you did later, because if you change your mind and you don't like the look of something, or you don't like the font or whatever, you can just change it in one place, and it's just a lot easier. So if I wanted to do all those same changes, change black to purple, and I had just formatted those cells, you can see it would have been kind of a pain to do that. So let's talk a little bit more about everything you can do in cell style. So this is our template that we use for financial modeling. And we have one sheet that's called our style guide. And this is just a visual way that you can see what all the styles are without having to go up to the cell styles gallery on the ribbon. So here you can see we have a bunch of different styles. The first section is for things like headers and some text. And then as I go down here, you'll see I have some cell styles for like indicating the meaning of certain cells. So we like to use cells with a yellow background for assumptions. So this is where somebody could add in some data. We have a certain style for error checks, and we actually have our choice here. It can either be an icon or it can be text. We have that pink one there. So any time a cell is intentionally left empty or it needs to be left empty, we mark it with that one. And we have number styles, which I have here at the bottom, and I'm going to go into a little bit further on this. But again, it's just really nice. If I have a table of data and I want it to be a certain number style, I don't choose the range and then go to the number format. I just pick my cell style in the gallery, and it does what I want. And again, if I ever need to change it, it's easy to do that. Now here I'm just going to show a little bit about our template so you can see how these are used. So you can see as you go through, you kind of get a sense of, okay, there's some consistency here. The cells that I can type in are always yellow. The cells that are pink means it kind of needs to be empty, so I should leave it alone. And the headings all are consistent. So the top heading, the second heading, and the third heading, and then our error check cells are all the same. So it's just a real nice, easy way to add consistency to your file. And then while I'm showing about styles, I wanted to bring up this little thing about outlining. So you'll see here, I have this outline button where I can collapse and expand, and we have this built into our template because we have sections that we like to collapse and expand a lot. And you'll see the buttons at the top of my section. There's a little setting. It's actually only available on Windows, but if you go to your data tab and go to the outline part of the ribbon and then click in the little bottom corner of the outline section, it brings up this little options dialog. And normally both of these things are checked off here. So those first two checkboxes will be checked off. And the first one, it says summary rows below detail. And really what that means is it kind of controls where the expand or collapse button shows up. And you can see now that button is below my group. And I don't like it like that because when I click the button moves up or down. So yeah, it does the expand and collapse, but it's a pain, So I always like to change that. I uncheck summary rows below detail, and now the button's at the top, and when you click it, it expands down and expands up, but the button stays in the same place, which I find really nice.
We have a few questions, Steve.
Sure.
Trevor asked, are those pivot table layout settings workbook or application level?
That's actually a great question. I think those are application level. Is that right, Celia? Are you aware of that? You're muted.
You're
but
muted,
Yeah,
Celia.
sorry. Yeah, I think it's application level. Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's one that a lot of people would love to know the answer for, I'm sure. Paul is asking, can we change merge and center button into center across selection?
No. Unfortunately, you can't.
Saw that. I thought I saw Microsoft was bringing something out that they're putting a center cross selection button on. I don't remember whether it was beta or the online, but somebody showed it the other day, about a month ago, I think, on some demo I was watching.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
You haven't? I thought I saw that.
Maybe quick access toolbar.
It wasn't available. It was. Oh, you know what? It might have been.
No, there's actually
it might have been at the Global Excel Summit where Chris Webb was doing the. They're not available yet, but it's
now that you mentioned that, maybe I think I'm remembering.
Yeah, there was a lot of excitement about it wherever I saw it.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not something that you can. You're not able to add that to your quick access toolbar with the default thing, because it's not actually a command that's on the ribbon.
Yeah,
you have
it's
to go
within
into
a window, right? Dialog.
You have to go into the dialog and change it in there.
I see.
You could create a macro to do it, and then put your own button up there to run your macro, and that would do it.
Which some people do.
That may be how they add in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
That's the ones I've known. Oh, can you put merge in the quick access toolbar? You just said no, right?
Well, you can put merge in there.
I think so.
Oh,
yes.
merge you can.
Just not center across
center
selection.
across selections was the one that could not be.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, wants to put unmerge. Merge is evil.
And there was a question about Control-Shift-U for enlarging the formula bar. That is working for me, but I can't remember who is asking about it, is saying that it's not working for them.
That was Jeff.
Yeah, but that works for me. Control-Shift-U. It opens, enlarges, and collapses the Excel formula bar.
Yep, but it won't change the font size. Changing the font size is in the file options by changing the font size in there is the default font.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about some special cell styles, and these are there's 3 buttons on the ribbon there's the currency, the percent, and the comma. And those are actually styles that are in the style gallery, and you can modify those styles in the gallery, and that will take effect in those buttons. So I'll show how that works. So here I have some values, and if I go ahead and choose the currency, for example, on that top one, it's going to give me 2 decimal places, and I really don't want that, so I might go in and hit the decimal button to turn that off. Percent is actually not going to give me decimals, and I may want that, so I may add decimals on. And then the comma one also will give me decimals, and these are the defaults, so I may not like that, so I'll turn those off. You don't need to worry about doing that all the time. If you want to have the decimals on the percent and not on the others, you can go into your cell styles. So on the comma, you can right-click and modify, and then you can change the decimal places right there. And then that one's not going to do that. You can go into the currency and do the same thing, and then you won't get decimal places anytime you choose currency. And then for percent, you can go in there and change the percent. And in my case, I like to have the decimals, and then you'll always get that. You don't have to go in and mess around changing them individually each time. Is there a question coming in?
No, a lot of people like that hide the decimals without having to push that button to get backwards all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So here I just hit the currency button on the toolbar, and you can see that my change in the cell style did take effect. And I mean, you can really actually use those for anything. So you could change the cell style to include other things like the font, the color, all different things. And that way you'd have a style that's just right on the ribbon. It would just have a funny label that if you're hitting comma and it was giving you some other style, but you can certainly do that if you want.
Cell styles are workbook related, aren't they? They're not, that wouldn't go across every workbook you have, would it?
No, that's right. So cell styles are part of the workbook.
So you would need to save it as a template if you wanted to use it over and over.
Yeah, so that's
okay.
a great point. So in our template that we use for our financial models, we have all those cell styles pre-built and they're in there. So they're always available to us whenever we start. There are some ways to easily get cell styles from one workbook to another. I actually haven't done that in a while because I have all my styles set up. So maybe, I don't know if Celia, if you're familiar with that, but I know there's a pretty simple way to do that.
I don't think so. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a way that you can, I think if you just copy a sheet from one workbook that has the styles that you want and paste it into another workbook where you want those styles, that sheet will bring the styles.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know that.
Yeah.
I know about the names that they go along when we copy stuff from one workbook to the other one. I never realized. Well, maybe because I very, very rarely use the cell styles.
Okay.
But I should use them more. Yeah, I think I just don't use them because I never bothered to set up a template workbook and then having to change them all the time. Each time we create a new workbook is kind of annoying anyways, but I think creating the template is a good one.
Yeah, I was not a big user of cell styles until the last few years, and now I always use cell. Even if I just think I'm going to set something in a certain format and I may use it again, I'll create a cell style because it's just so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
I know Tanya, I think she was here. I don't think she's anymore. She's also a great fan of cell styles. Okay. She's not around anymore.
All right, just a couple little things left. So we have templates for the workbook and the sheet, but you can also have chart templates. So here I have a simple chart that I created, and I'll make a few changes to it, and then why is my video not advancing? There we go. So, the default, a lot of things like the labels are small, the title's small, so I usually make those things bigger. Maybe I don't like the colors, but here I'm just making some changes just to illustrate how this works. But here I'll just change the color and then actually get rid of the grid lines or the axis lines, and then add data labels and change the font size of those. So if you have a certain style that you like and you find yourself always going into your chart and making the same changes, stop doing that. Instead, set it up once and then right click on the chart, and you can choose save as save as template. And then this should go directly into the folder where it needs to be, and you can name it whatever you want. So here I'll just call this one my column chart. And you can see the folder path up there was in the special folder, but it should just go there automatically for you. Now I'm going to create another copy of the same chart. Again, it just uses the default, and now instead of making all those changes, I can just right click on the chart and choose change chart type. And in this change chart type gallery, if you've saved a template, the templates will be available at the top of the list on the left. I can just choose my template, click OK, and that applied all those changes without me having to do each one individually. So that was with like inserting a chart and then changing the chart type. You can also just start out by inserting the one that you want. So instead of picking from the thing at the gallery there, you can just directly go to the dialog and then choose your template and click OK. So it just gets created immediately using that template. So again, really handy if you use a lot of charts. And finally, personal macros. So personal macros, it's like your own little personal toolbox, and that you can do obviously many, many things with macros. I just have one example here where you go into your recording a macro, you can choose to store it in either this current workbook or your personal macro workbook. So by default, when you start Excel, you won't have a personal macro workbook. You need to actually create one, and the easiest way to do it is by recording one and choosing personal macro workbook there. So now when I click OK, well, I guess I already have one, so I'm not doing that, but you'll have your personal macro, and then you can put any other macros that you want into there. The example that I'm going to show here, if you take a look at the sheet, or as I go through the sheets, you'll notice that they're all like different zoom levels and they're scrolled to different parts of the sheet. And when we give some temp or a file back to one of our clients, we like to have everything nice and neat. So we want the sheets to be all at the same zoom level, and we want everything to be scrolled up, to the top. So as I go through here, you'll notice the zoom level is going to be different on these, and it's pretty ugly if you're, it's not very professional looking if you're going through. So I have a macro that I can just run, and rather than me going through one at a time and scrolling all these back up, I just run my macro. And because it's in my personal macro workbook, I don't need to save my Excel file as a macro enabled file. I just have it in my macro workbook, and then it's always at my fingertips. So here you can see the list of all the macros that I have. And there's one that says go to home on all sheets. So I just choose that one, and you can assign shortcut keys to these if you want. And now just run it. It asks me if I want to put it 100% on each sheet, and I do. And now in an instant, it just went through all my sheets and it scrolled to the top on each one and set the same zoom level. So now I can know that I can give this to our client and it'll look nice and professional. So anyway, that's just one simple example, but definitely take advantage of personal macros, because if there's anything that you find yourself doing over and over again, you might think to yourself, okay, can I make this automated? And the answer is almost always yes, because you can write a macro to do it. All right, so that is the end. Like I said, I think there are more things you can customize about Excel because there's just no end to Excel. But hopefully that was helpful, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We have a couple. So Aurora is asking, would the format painter help to copy formatting for charts instead of using templates?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I haven't used the format painter with charts, but maybe someone has. Let me see. I can bring something up here real quickly. Let's see. So I'll just change. No, it's not enabled. So as I have a chart selected, the format painter is not enabled. Now I'm on a Mac, so people can tell me if this is available on Windows.
And you select the other one that was changed from the default, also disabled.
Yeah.
I think you can copy and paste format only, but I think, Celia, you were right. It doesn't get everything. It sort of do seem to redo things.
I think it may work for some of the formattings, but depending on the changes we make, I don't think it carries all over to the new one.
Yeah.
But I have that impression from an experience a long time ago. I can't remember exactly what was not being carried over. And charts, we can do so many different things with them, so many changes, so many customization. So just a matter of trying that, but I don't think it will work completely.
Yeah.
And Paul asked for pivot table totals. Can you put them at the top and the left?
So, and the defaults, unfortunately, I have a Mac here and it doesn't have the pivot table defaults as an option, but I think it did have options for the pivot table, like where the subtotals will go. So once you turn it to tabular format,
yeah, there's something about that. I think if you look into Deborah Dalglish website, contextures.com, she has a lot of materials about a lot of content about pivot tables. There was a conversation about that the other day. I think it only works for certain, like you were saying, Steve, I think tabular. What are the formats we have for pivot tables? It will work for some of the pivot table formats or layouts, better said, but it does not work for all of them.
right.
So tabular does
Sorry.
not work. What are the other ones?
There's compact, and then there's here I have it right here.
Yeah. So for the other ones, I think there's
outline format. Yeah.
Yeah, outline.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I never use outline. So.
Yeah.
No.
So for the other, I think the tabular, that's the one I use always, practically always, or most of the times. For that one, it's not available. It's available for the other two, I believe. Something that you can try. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're tabular, it's kind of by definition the top row. Well, this is a bad example because there's only one of each thing. Let me switch this around. Because it's tabular, there's no space for the subtotal at the top. So even though you can choose it, show subtotals at the top of group, it doesn't do anything.
We had Carlos Barbosa do the pivot table presentation a while ago. Do you remember that, Celia? And he went through a lot of the sessions on that, a lot of the settings. So if somebody wants to go through the MS Excel Toronto YouTube channel and find Carlos's presentation, I'm pretty sure he covered all that kind of stuff in there. Whatever, and if he did, it's worth watching anyway. It was a fabulous presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you can on Windows, you can set the defaults, and I believe that setting will flow through. So it should work out.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry, I'm going to mess it up. Aloj, because I said it wrong before because names are backwards. He's asking if you can open a spreadsheet in more windows to see different sheets at the same moment. Also, using a new instance, especially when working in Power Query, it works. Oh.
Yeah, so there's two ways.
Not much a question, there's a comment.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to do it. I'll just for the sake of everyone, you can open multiple windows for the same file. So you can go to the View tab, and you can go to New Window. And now I have two windows for the same file, and you can go obviously to different sheets in the different windows, but it's the same file. You can, on Windows, you can actually run a separate instance of Excel. So you could open up the same file in two completely separate Excel processes, which would enable you to go into the Power Query editor on one and keep the other one still interactive. The trick to that is holding down, I forget if it's the Shift or the Alt key when you launch Excel, and it'll ask you, do you want to create a new session of Excel? And then you can hit yes, and it'll create, they're totally separate. So it'll be as if you're working on two separate computers in the same session of Excel or in the same workbook, for example.
And then we have a, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Casper is asking, what is the best textbook these days that one can buy that will cover all the new dynamic array Excel formulas? Excel issued so many new ones that it's hard to stay up to date. It's not quite on our topic, but I think it leads in nicely to Bill Jellen's session.
There's this one by Alan Murray. It has maybe 1 year or two, and it covers, it's all about functions. So it's advanced Excel formulas. And at the end, it has the filter, unique, and then sort, and also a chapter about the let and lambda. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong place. Let and lambda, and all the lambda helper functions. So it probably does not cover some of the most recent ones that may have created. They have been created after the book was published. But yeah, we have, I don't know if you can see let and the helper and the filter and whatnot. So Advanced Excel Formulas by Alan Murray could be one book to look into about that topic.
Yeah. And doesn't Bill Jellen's new book cover dynamic arrays? Was that what you had on your...
That's with pivot table, specifically for pivot tables. So I'm not sure if he goes over all the, it's pivot dynamic array, using pivot tables with dynamic arrays. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the book yet, but I don't think he will be covering function by function necessarily.
Okay. Now, I think I've missed a few questions. Celia, did you see any I missed?
I don't think so. I think we've covered, there was a conversation about subtotals. We covered that. So I think, yeah. Do you have any other book recommendations, Steve, that you can think of?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, so
loads of YouTube videos.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's always the YouTube videos and the Microsoft documentation, which is a starting point as well when you are working with dynamic array functions. Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any new ones. Give it another moment.
Otherwise, or until then, Steve, any other things you would like to add where people can connect with you or find any information related to the topic or something else?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining, and please connect with me on LinkedIn if you're interested. And if you have any further questions after this, I'll be happy to answer those, because I know there may have been some things I went over extremely fast, or you try this on your own and it doesn't work. So feel free to do that. And my LinkedIn is already in the chat there.
Thank you. Yes, and the recording will be up in a couple of days, so then people can go over it and pause and find their settings and whatnot and try. Someone was saying that they know what they will be doing tomorrow morning when they log in. They will be setting up templates. Yeah.
And it's fun. It's like the never-ending thing, because you get in and you're like, you know what? I really want my thumbnail to look like this, and then you'll sit there and play with it for 5 hours.
I think it will be a success if you make the file available for other people at the company, and having that specific thumbnail customized to the company's branding. It will make
yeah. And cell styles too. I mean, it's great to set up your cell styles and share those with others, and you can all be consistent,
Yeah, that could be very helpful. I sometimes I was at the company where I tended to fill in gray the cells that have formulas, and other people fill in gray the cells that are input cells, and you never know. And then but I guess it needs to be something that needs to be defined at least at a team level, so that it doesn't get confusing.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I think we are good. Thank you so much, Steve. It was a wonderful
session,
and it's one of those we will be coming back time to time, because it's yeah, one of those things that are always useful to know and to apply.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All right, well,
everyone,
thank you
for
for
joining
inviting
us.
me.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thank
Have
you
a good
so
night.
much, Steve.
Sure, bye. Have a good night.
You too.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.